Alright, here's the deal. I have 13 cars that I want to own before I turn 30, which is in like 10 years. This is not one of them. Pretend this is a Lotus Elise. That's the next car I want.
My life, my rules, my style, my attitude.
This is not that. I already own the first car on my list, a 2002 BMW M3, and in this series I'll be setting up multiple revenue streams to pay for car number 2 within 6 months. In this episode I'm flipping this 2009 Mazda 3 to make a bit of money to use as capital to jumpstart my other streams of income. Let's start with a few stats while I do an initial wash, because I hate working on dirty cars. I bought this Mazda for $1,800. I'm hoping to put another $500 into it and sell it afterwards for about $3,000 to $4,000. I found it on Facebook Marketplace and I got a good deal on it because the seller had a new vehicle coming in and really just wanted to get rid of it. It's got about 160,000 miles and is in relatively good shape mechanically. There are a lot of minor issues, but these are the main ones that I'm going to be tackling. I want to restore the oxidized headlights, clean the exterior and interior, seal up the condensating taillights, replace all the pads and rotors, as the previous owner included new ones in the sale of the car, and fix the currently broken air conditioning, and check the oil and coolant to make sure the car is good to go for the new buyer. I also wanted to mention that over the course of this series, I will be donating 20% of the value of each new car I get after I acquire it. For example, if I buy this upcoming car for $50,000, I'll be giving an additional $10,000 to charity, and so on for every single car in the series. Each car is more expensive than the last, so every time I complete a goal, even more money is donated. So please consider subscribing, as it not only helps me make more content like this, but also goes directly to help those in need. Okay, so after the wash, I'm going straight into the headlights. I'll start by masking off the surrounding area with painter's tape and then wet sanding with 400, 600, then 2000 grit sandpaper. This cuts out all the old oxidation and gives a clear coat that I'll be applying a surface to stick to. When I'm through with that, I'll wipe down the headlight with some alcohol, and then finally mask off the area even more with a trash bag and spray a few coats of clear coat to make the headlights look brand new again. Look at the before and after. Now that the headlights are all done, I'm moving straight on to the brakes. It's a pretty simple process on each corner. I'll loosen the lug nuts while the car is still on the ground so that the wheel doesn't rotate freely. Then I can just jack up the car and remove the lug nuts and the wheel. With the caliper exposed, I'll remove the anti-vibration clip and the 2 bolts holding in the caliper, and once the caliper is removed, I can also remove the caliper mounting bracket in order to access the rotor. Also, this isn't really a tutorial, and I'm a dumbass, so please head over to someone like Chris Fix's channel if you want solid, reliable information. Anyway, now I can wash the new rotors with brake cleaner to get the factory coating off of them, and install them back onto the studs. After that, the bracket goes back on, and the new brake pads go in. Then I'll just do that 3 more times, once each corner. With the brakes done, I can finally get to work on this annoying AC system. I checked the AC lines and it seems that the system still holds refrigerant and doesn't seem to be leaking. The compressor spins freely, but it won't engage when I turn the AC on, so this makes me think it's an issue with the electromagnetic clutch. And to get to it, I have to remove this center Allen bolt, and this was the biggest pain in my ass, since it seemed like someone went insane with the Loctite, or it just rusted to hell. I don't know. But eventually I rubbed my last 2 brain cells together hard enough and created this hillbilly contraption. I'm using a jack stand to keep the compressor from turning, and then I'm using the jack to apply a force to the Allen key. I was honestly expecting to lose a finger doing this, but it turned out okay and actually worked. Then I just cut the belt because you're supposed to replace these stretch belts every time you take them off. With the pulley off, I tested the electromagnet and whoops, I just did all that work for nothing because it functioned fine even though it looked like it was thrown into the fire pit as a sacrificial offering. So now I'm regretting my life choices and I decided to do a little bit more research on what could potentially be going on here. Alright, I don't know what's going on. This is pretty much the worst case scenario because the car doesn't even start now. Plug key in, no lights, no nothing. It's off, no security light blinking. And I checked the main fuse, which is this one right here. I switched it with the starter. Either these are both bad or something happened and the battery's dead somehow. Okay, after another trip to O'Reilly's, the battery was apparently dead. So I don't know how it drained that fast. I wonder if there's some parasitic loss going on, but at least I know, well, hopefully this is the fix. You know, if I put this in and nothing happens, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but we'll see. Let's go! Car is on, let's go. Okay, I started the car, and it ran fine, so the battery's good, but the AC still didn't work. I turned on the AC, and the coil right there did not turn on. So what I'm gonna do now is check for continuity again from the battery to the relay to the coil and see what I can come up with. Maybe I'll check the passenger side fuse box as well, but I don't think there are too many fuses in there that affect the AC system. We'll see. All the fuses and relays are fine, and I managed to make sure there was continuity between the relay and the electromagnetic coil, but eventually after like 3 days of just scratching my head like a caveman, I connected a wire from the negative battery terminal to the coil, and it worked. I had a strong magnetic pull to the coil. So obviously this was a grounding issue. So I wire brushed what I assumed to be the spot where the coil grounds the compressor, and just reattached everything after I had verified that it worked. This entire process of troubleshooting took so long. I absolutely hate electrical issues. I also got a new pulley, coil, and clutch for about $33 on eBay. So I put them on, stretched the new belt back on by turning the crankshaft while the belt was clamped to the pulley, reattached some fender liner pieces, and finally put the wheel back on. After that clusterfuck, I decided I wanted to do something easier, and so I began resealing the rear taillights. All the condensation had previously evaporated, and I knew roughly where the leak was, so I just went around the entire housing on both lights with some clear silicone gasket maker. I had to let that sit for about 24 hours, so in the meantime, I used some general interior cleaner to get some really questionable stains out of the passenger seat, and then I washed the car once more for good measure. On the subject of the tire pressure light, I inflated the tires to the correct PSI and made sure they weren't leaking, but the blinking TPMS light just wouldn't go away, so I'm fairly certain that it's a faulty tire pressure sensor, and they're relatively cheap online, but at this point I was so far out of time that I'd budgeted for this project, so that evening I took lots of high quality pictures of the car and I listed it on Facebook Marketplace, and I just waited for the offers to start rolling in. After a ton of messages asking me to sell it for a little bit less than my monthly rent, I finally got a real bite. I had it listed for $3,400 and I agreed to sell it for $33,000. The buyer came by, checked out the car, test drove it, and before I knew it, I was standing in an empty parking lot with a stack of cash in my hand. So here's the breakdown of everything I spent flipping the car. And here's how much time I spent. I used about 7% of my time to achieve about 2% of my monetary goal. That seems like I'm not going to be able to reach the amount I need in the time I've given myself, but I'm fairly confident that my profit intake will begin to snowball once I set up more streams of income. And now that I have that extra $1,000, I'm going to use it to start a new business in the next video that should really speed things up. I would consider buying another car to flip, but I'm going back to school very soon, and I'd much rather start a business that I could run from anywhere. So that's about it. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section. Thank you for watching the inaugural part of this 6-month journey, and I hope to see you in the next one. Subscribe. Goodbye.